It's early. It's only April.
That's what Oli Marmol was telling you today, I guess.
Hey, look, he doesn't buy into it. I think you're referencing the flagship KMOX show where Oli Marmol's a guest on Tuesdays, and he said, nope, it's not really a topic. And he likened it to, remember, I think it was last year when they couldn't win the first game of a series.
Yes.
And it was like every first game we would have to have that as a topic. And I'm sure that grates on the patience of the Cardinal manager who is like in the fires day in, day out, and is like, this is sort of one of those baseball isms that will level out over the course of time. But right now, they technically are 2-12, so that's why we talk about it. And I would love nothing more than to see a Miles Michaelis shove tonight to get that topic out of our lexicon.
I think operatively, Oli Marmol's right. It might just be a phase. Like that 3-month period where you listen to a little too much rock music or whatever.
There's no such thing as that.
You were doing your hair in a certain way or whatever. Maybe this is just a phase for the Cardinals and how they are performing on the road. Not able to, certainly not able to get run support in a lot of situations. Have had, I think, quality pitching in some of the most recent road games that they've had, but still have not been able to find ways to turn that into victories. And Oli Marmol, again, likening it to last year, saying, hey, maybe it's just the same as this whole first game syndrome that we had every series that we were playing, which maybe it was, but I know at some point you're going to have more road games than you will have first games of a series. Just mathematically, you have more of them to deal with, and the way you're performing in them right now has been poor. And it does have to improve if you're going to be a competitive team. So, will they find a way to finally get some rhythm in that sense will be the question, I guess, this week.
Yeah, and I don't, it's still early enough to me that, yes, we have to talk about the road thing, but it's not like, I agree with the answer. There's not anything different that's going to happen. Like, you score more runs, you probably win more games. Busch Stadium is more of a pitcher-friendly park, but I bet if you sought it out, they probably have scored more runs at home than they have on the road since they've won a bunch more games at home. They have to figure out a way to be more consistent as an offense, to start taking advantage of the starts they're getting from guys like Andre Palante yesterday. Gives you another quality start that they were unable to secure a win out of. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. There's going to be the hot, cold periods for your bullpen, and hopefully you find more rhythm there than what they've had so far on the whole. But if they're a team getting good starting pitching for the most part, keeping you in games, the offense has to be able to put up more runs, especially yesterday. They're facing Nick Martinez, who I think probably the least on paper of the four starters that the Cardinals are going to face in this 4-game Cincinnati series. It's Brady Singer tonight, old friends for Royals fans, and he's off to a good start, 4-0 with a 3.62 ERA. Andrew Abbott is a tough customer, and Hunter Green is probably their ace. So you had your shot against Nick Martinez, who came into the game last night with a 5 ERA, and he got it below 5 because he only gave up 1 run. It happened in the first inning, and then the Cardinals kind of went on cruise control where the bats went silent again. And so that whole notion of, the bats are more consistent this year, Brant Brown fixed everything. Like, here we are a couple of weeks after kind of having those conversations, and the Cardinals are still looking for more production at the plate.
Well, and it's certainly when you have this type of disconnect from home versus road, because it does seem to be a little easier to come by those runs in that timely hit, if you will, when the Cardinals have been at Busch Stadium, but on the road, it's eluded them a lot of the time. Or maybe even they're just not even creating as many chances to be in those spots to take the lead or tie the game or whatever it might be. They've just been unable to put enough competitive at-bats together in order to be a threat in most cases. So that, again, seemed to be kind of the way it boiled down last night. And Andre Palante, with how well he pitched, still didn't matter as the Cardinals couldn't come away with the victory there. But it's hard to pin that on one person, right? Because it's a collective effort still. And you moved Wilson Contreras down in the lineup today, so we'll see what happens there. He's batting 5th today. I know he's varied in spots over the last few weeks or so, trying to get him going in some way, shape, or form.
And he's going. We don't have to do that narrative anymore. He's going. He's got a 10-game hit streak. He's been rocking.
Yeah. And it's better than it was before, that's for sure. And now you're trying to find the best way to situate him around everybody else. And we'll see. I do like the lineup today. I think this could be a spot where the Cardinals are able to maybe get a little early pressure on Brady Singer. Problem is, though, they got early pressure technically yesterday, and it didn't amount to much. So you've got to keep that going as much as possible.
Yeah, early pressure has to be something that turns into, consistency throughout a game, and we didn't see that from the Cardinals last night. They led things off with a Nootbaar double. Arenado drove him in later in that first inning, and for that to be the only run you get in a ballpark that historically is pretty favorable for offenses, and now the Reds, they only scored 3 runs, so that could be a credit to the Cardinal pitching staff last night, but they had like a handful, 5 or so extra base hits, did Cincinnati. The Cardinals had 3 for their troubles with 3 doubles in the game, but they only had 5 total hits through that St. Louis lineup, and we're starting to see that squeeze more and more in terms of, and look, Ivan Herrera, we'll talk with Will Carroll about what a rehab assignment could look like for him and how long it could be before he returns to the Cardinals lineup. But you think about this lineup and the way Oliver Marmol is trying to put guys in positions to succeed and just get them in there in general at times. Don't see Jordan Walker's name today. And that's one of those things that the push-pull of, well, if Walker's not in there, maybe that gives you a shot for Burleson, but Burleson has no home runs on the season and is another guy that they need more power production from. So, just trying on a daily basis to figure out, as this sort of notion of runway is persistent throughout the Cardinals' thought process, there's going to be guys that don't play a given day, and they'll have to be able to come back in the next day and take advantage of their spot. And right now, they're just trying to spark anything they can. Mason Wynn up to the number 2 spot is something that I like. I just wonder if they're going to get a few different looks at guys to see that when Herrera comes back, does he slide right into the number 2 spot as the right-handed batter that you're looking for there? And then with a resurgent Contreras, he moves down to 5, and maybe there's a little bit more length to the lineup than there has been, because the likes of Burleson and Gorman and Pajes, today it's Pozo, but that 6 through 8 range has not been very productive lately either. So you're just trying to spark anything to see where the Cardinals might be able to go with it.
875-KTGR if you want to call or text us. And they did switch it a little bit to the point where it's not left, right, as much across the board as it could be. There's a couple spots where righties are next to each other, and then there's a couple spots where lefties are next to each other. So we'll see what happens there with how the lineup construction evolves over the next few days or so. And then, do you think there's maybe a spot that, I guess, Jose Barrerero's here for a reason, right? It got brought up before the start of this series. Thomas Saggese sent down, and maybe he gets a chance off the bench in one of these games to find a way, and then probably towards the end of the series. Could you maybe pencil him in for a Thursday early start type of situation for Jose Barrerero if he finds his way into some opportunities here? Just called up from the Cardinals earlier this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think more than anything he's here because Thomas Saggese's not. And Thomas Saggese, what was the role of that roster spot? It wasn't to play. So as much as we can, wax eloquent about, oh, here comes Barrero, he's an athletic, toolsy player who just hasn't put it together at the big league level yet, I don't really know that his role is going to be all that different from a Michael Ciani, who, other than he can play some shortstop too. We'll see how often they're going to be able to get him in there. But I think the reason he's here is because that role isn't going to play enough to have been Thomas Saggese. And Saggese is a 23-year-old guy who I would still consider in that prospect tier. And you want him to play every day. Barrero is an older player that you don't have to play him. He can rot on the bench and enjoy his time and maybe come to have a skill set where if he runs well and plays a few different defensive positions, he's a nice luxury to have off your bench. I hesitate to see a world, unless there's a Mason Wynn injury again, where Barrero gets enough of a look that we go, hey, this guy's a part, he's a fixture moving forward. But it's nice to get a chance to see him. It's just going to be sparingly, I think, when you consider all of the other players that they have priority behind to get into games.
That's tough for Thomas Saggese with how well he had been hitting at the big league level. That's the thing, right?
Yeah, he was a victim. I mean, he's a victim of circumstance because he's played well enough to deserve And of course, with the way that the league and nationally the Cardinals have been perceived the last few years about, well, basically they think that nationally the perspective is the Cardinals can do no right, and everything they do, it seems to be like the dumbest decision in human history. And then a lot of times you get the context where it's like, all right, if they are intent upon playing Gorman, playing Walker, playing these guys that have had 2, 3, now 4 years in the big leagues, if you're Gorman's case, and they need to find out what those guys are in 2025, yeah, it doesn't probably lend itself toward they're playing the best 9 every single day, but they've done the whole best 9 every single day thing for the last couple of years, and it hasn't gotten them there. So they needed that reset for the organization. Now you're finding out, okay, the guys who we're at that crossroads with, play them and find out what happens, and then you can learn about what they are for your future. In the case of Sajaci, there's still time yet for him to have that day. That's just not today. I think that's August and September. Like, push or shove, however it comes to be, this roster doesn't look the same in August or September, especially if the Cardinals don't turn things around. Like, they're either in the mix, and so you have to start saying who are our best 9 to play because our fans deserve that, or they're not in the mix, and players could be traded in bulk, which provides new opportunities for guys like Sajaci. His time will come, but you're right. He's played well enough from like his standpoint to be a big league starter right now until he shows otherwise, and he's not being given that latitude in St. Louis this season. It stinks, but I also can look at the other side of it and go, I get why it's happening.
Maybe this is the year that, again, you try to give that runway to players, and of course the organization set out the standard of, hey, reset year, we're in transition, find ways to get these key players opportunities, find out what they're like. The wins and losses, if there are wins, great, but it's more about finding what these players can provide for the next 3 or 4 years. And we'll see what that ends up being. But right now, in the short term, they're just trying to find ways to go on the road and provide consistent offense for this pitching staff. And we'll see if they do that for Miles Mikolas, but then it also becomes the question of, okay, Mikolas has had a couple of solid starts, most recently. Does that mean he's fixed? Does it mean that he's back to what he was expected to be beforehand whenever we thought Miles Mikolas was going to be a mainstay in this rotation for several years, however long ago that was? Is he back to that? What could we expect from Miles Mikolas tonight?
I still think you can expect or hope for Miles Mikolas to be a solid 5-inning starter, but that's not the role that he has filled in years past. He was a consistent 200 innings guy for the Cardinals when he was in his heyday, and then last year he still got you to 170 innings. But right now it's that third time through the batting order that tends to trip up Miles Mikolas, and so if you're Oliver Marmol, you've got your finger on the button. You've got relievers warming up when that situation arises, whether he's through 4 2/3 or whether he's through 5 1/3 or whatever the case might be. You have a pretty quick trigger when it comes to getting him out of those scenarios. Yes, it's unfortunate to have to manage to that weakness because it's a pretty significant weakness when you talk about how inconvenient it is to basically have to have the bullpen hot after 18 batters on the other side. You have to be ready for things to fall apart, and you want to maybe have somebody warming up just in case it happens in a hurry. So that's unfortunate. To the purpose of your question, it means that they cannot get Miles Mikolas of old, where he was an innings a year that would go 6 or 7 pretty consistently and end the season with 200-plus innings pitched in 33 starts or whatever it would be. But can they get a guy that keeps him in the game the way that he has 80% of the season so far? Yeah, he's had 4 starts where he's been pretty darn, I would say, categorized from acceptable to good. And he's had one where he committed federal offenses to be on that mound at Fenway like he was in that Sunday in Boston. Like, that can't happen ever again. And it's one of those where he's batting 800 right now. 4 starts give you a chance. One of those 5 starts, he was the sole reason you lost, and you might as well just, gone and shook the other manager's hand and said good game after first couple of innings. That's not a productive way to live in Major League Baseball, but you'll take the 4 out of 5 where he has done pretty well. Let's say if he has a blow-up game, though, can it be more like the Palante outing last week where he goes like 4 1/3, gave up 4 runs, but the Cardinals end up coming back to win because you at least offered the attempt for your offense to come back there. Don't give up 9 runs. And I don't think Miles will tonight, but is he ever going to be that quality start merchant again where he can always get you through 6? I don't know. Tonight will be a good test of that in a ballpark that the hits and the runs can add up on you in a hurry if you don't have your good stuff.
Yeah, and the fact that he's coming off of his last start, which is his only quality start of the year so far out of the 5, and it was a scoreless one. He went 6 scoreless against the Braves, which is, solid, right? It's certainly his best one of the year. And so you try to translate that against the Reds. Now, I will say, just looking at the, again, small sample size when it comes to this, Reds hitters do have some pretty good numbers against Miles Michaelis, unfortunately. Ellie De La Cruz has done well against him. And McLean, who's up near the top of the lineup, has an OPS of 1,000. McLean's up there, and it's just, or Spencer Steer, guys like that. Friedo's at the top. We'll see. They've been able to get to Michaelis before, and we'll just see what those adjustments look like. But I'd be interested to see how it starts.
And look, you can't hide anybody from matchups. At this point, he's part of this rotation. He's going to have to go out and post those 5 to 6 innings that keep the Cardinals in the game. Even if it's a 5 innings, 3 runs, and you do that math and you say, well, that's not a very shiny ERA. No, but 5 innings, 3 runs, if the Cardinals can get to Brady Singer early and maybe you see it as a 3-2 or a 3-3 game after 5 or 6 innings, and then you let the bullpens decide it, and maybe the Cardinal offense can produce a little bit more than they did last night against the Reds pen, which was nothing. I think there were 10 straight retired by the Cincinnati relievers to end that game. So you got to be more consistent. There can't be this sort of cruise control. It feels like they're kind of mailing it in the way you're watching the at-bats. They're letting good pitches go by, and then they get into, negative counts where they have to maybe chase or expand the zone.
Yeah, we'll see how it looks for the time being there. But at this point, you just have to hope that Miles Michaelis continues to build off of the recent play that he's had here in his last few starts. And the Cardinals certainly searching for some more run support on the road. And maybe they get past this phase at some point here. But call or text us with your Cardinals thoughts, 875-KTGR here on The Big Show to discuss all things Cardinals with us. Do they get it done? I say they do. 5-3. I'll say Cardinals get an early kick against Brady Singer, maybe a run or two against that bullpen, pad the lead a little bit more. 5-3. Call my shot there.
I think this has to be like a game where you see Ryan Helsley because it ends up being really close and tight to the finish. But I'll go 4-3. I don't know if I can project a 5-run day for the Cardinals at this point in time. I hope I'm wrong. We got to see more out of that offense for sure.